Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation around founders' mental health and well-being. My name is Dr. Mary Meduna Gross, and today I'm thrilled to have another conversation with Jessica Hallahan. Jessica and I did a podcast interview maybe a year or some ago.
Time flies.
It does. Time flies. It's so good to be with you again, to be talking about not just founders' mental health, but high performing leaders and professionals. Our mental health and well being is one of those things that I think, first of all, when we just use the word mental health, we just kind of check out for a little bit like, oh, that's a big thing. I don't have it today. Right? I don't have it. Well-being, I might talk about that a little bit, if I can, maybe do a gratitude journal or something, a little thing. But we're here really because those little things, while important and can add up to a big thing, when we're just doing the little things, it doesn't tend to add up. And then I find people who become disillusioned with this whole process, like, oh, I'll never get there anyway. Like the struggle is just part of the game.
Yeah.
So that's what we're here to dissect with you today. Jessica, let me tell you the audience a little bit more about you before we dive in. So Jessica received her master's in public health at Westchester University, and she's the owner of Journey to Yourself. She's a speaker and a stress management health educator, which is why she's here with us today. Through her career in education, she realized that we all have a common issue. Everyone, at some point or another, struggles with handling stress. Through her life journey, Jessica created Journey to Yourself. Gosh, it's so good to be with you.
I'm so excited to be on here. Thank you so much for reaching out and getting me on here. This is awesome.
Yeah. So, when you hear founders, high performing professionals, mental health and well being, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Habits. Like, what are their habits? Yeah. What are
Okay.
they doing every day? What's their routine? Yeah. Like, what are they doing? Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna focus on habits today. So let's use our stories, or maybe we have stories of people that we've worked with or people that we know that can help paint the picture of what it is that we're facing here. Just as a reference, in an earlier conversation in this series with Michael Friedman, we talked about the statistics around, in particular, entrepreneurs, mental health and well-being, and the high correlation between entrepreneurs and childhood trauma. And not only childhood trauma, but also someone in their family probably has mental health issues, which I just find fascinating. I don't know exactly what it means, but I find that fascinating because to me, what it means is there's some sense of we in this high performing entrepreneurial world, right? We overcome. And I think that we're really good at overcoming, but I think sometimes that can be our downfall as well.
Oh, yeah. And I think what you're saying there too is that as an entrepreneur, I'm the one that has to do it all. So not just from the different hats, but also I'm the one that has to say, okay, Jess, your alarm is set at this time and you get up at this time and you get this done at this time. And, I just came from speaking before I got on here and there was another speaker in the room and I saw him speak and I went to him. I said, what did you think? Because we don't have a boss to say, hey, you checked all these boxes. So I think to your mindset is that whether it's because of our upbringing, we had to do a lot on our own. And so we already have that mindset of, I have to do it on my own because if I don't do it, then who else is going to do it type thing. If I don't stand up for myself, then who's going to stand up for myself? Right. So I think there's a lot of that kind of mindset going on with it too. And so, yeah, we put a lot on ourselves.
We really do. And I'm so glad you just dive right into that whole being alone piece, because I think that's really at the core of what this pain is, right? Gosh, this just popped into my head. So there was a tragedy in our family a few years ago, a car accident, people died. And I remember my aunt messaging me or texting me saying something, because most people don't know what to say, right? And in those scenarios. And she just had the most beautiful way of saying something to the effect of, we're not here to take the pain away, but we're here to walk with you through the pain.
Yeah.
And that sense of connectivity was so powerful. I can still feel it.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's so much to be said for that, 'cause I think a lot of times, like you said, we don't know what first of all, sorry for your loss. Let's rewind for a hot second there. Sorry for your loss, because that's a lot. But I think what you said aunt?
My
Yeah.
aunt,
Yeah.
yes.
She sent the taxes. Yeah, I think what she was saying is what a lot of us need to hear in those moments, that like you're not alone. And that's kind of what the trigger was, what you said earlier, right? That like not feeling alone, but also no matter what I say, no matter how many pies I make, no matter how many meatballs I put on your front step, no matter how long I hold you, it's not really going to take the pain away. It is a process. And as you know, when you lose somebody, you're going to have really great days. You're like, really great. And then there's been times you just someone cuts you off in traffic and you just lose it, right? And I think what your aunt is saying, that whether you're at the high or the low, the medium, I'm here. My phone is on. I'm here for whatever that stage is. And I think that is so cool, and awareness, and I don't know. Rebecca Curse would say a bad girl, like you know, or to say like, I just think it's awesome. I think a lot of us need to kind of acknowledge like we don't have to. I think sometimes we try to push ourselves through the process.
Right,
Like, just get through it. Just get right back to the happiness. And no, it's okay.
right.
Waves. Ride the waves. Do it.
Well, and that whole idea of pushing through professionally, I think exists as well too, right? So not only do we feel alone, but we feel like we just have to push through whatever pain, whether it's mental, physical, or emotional or spiritual pain. We just got to push through it because we've got something to do. Have you seen that as well?
Oh my goodness. Talking about trigger stories. We're here. Let's do it. When I was going through college, I, worked a lot in the restaurant world, like a lot of us do, whether it's retail, restaurant, flexible schedule. But when I was back then, when I was going through it, you showed up sick. You showed up, you were getting sick. You went to the bathroom, you came back and you went back and shook some strings. If you had a migraine, it was fine. If you came from a funeral, you got a busier section. You got to stay busy. We got things to do. And I think there is definitely a mindset of you are successful if you just keep going, right?
Yes.
And we have that mindset. If I pause, I'm not going to be in front anymore. And I think people, I'm going to butcher this, but somebody said it so beautifully, but you'll still get the picture. It's like the slingshot mindset. Again, I'm going to butcher it, but we'll stay with me.
Mhm.
You get to pause, regroup, refresh,
Yeah.
eat lunch. I don't know, like something normal, something like that. And then because you took that pause, you go up faster, right?
Oh,
And so, like, and a lot of people, like, you sling back, regroup, and you go right back in the front, And I think we don't realize, we think if we just keep going, but it doesn't work that way, And I think there is a power in the pause, we have to really give ourselves that time.
yeah. And permission to do that. Now, um, in that pause, I think one of the and again, I'm gonna tell another, story of my own here. 20 some years ago, I had an opportunity and so I was much younger, in really good, shape, and I was on a trip, rafting through the Grand Canyon, and then we were gonna hike out from Phantom Ranch up to the top. And I remember training for this, and I could be wrong about this, but I think the time was around 4 to 5 hours expected on how long it would take to come out, and it was hot, and you got to make sure you ate and you drank and took care of yourself along the way. Well, I wake up early. Of course, we're getting up early. We're gonna hit the trail as soon as we can, and I'm there. I'm an early riser. Let's hit it. And I realize now that my story was, I can't stop. I cannot afford to even stop to pee on this way out because I felt like if I stopped, I would never get going again. And
Wow.
then I got to the top, and great, congratulations, Mary. You were the third person out with our group, right? And there were two elite athletes ahead of me. So congratulations, Mary. You made it out. You made it out ahead of most of the group. And it was kind of like, so what? I made it out, but I didn't see anything that happened along the whole way because all I was thinking about is getting out.
Yeah. As soon as you said that, that was gonna be my first mindset of think about all the stuff you missed on the way because you're so focused on, well, as long as I get to the top, I'm gonna get to the top. I'm gonna get to the top. And it's like, you just paused and saw all the little things in between. Okay, here's my story. So I just celebrated 4 years in business, and I'd send out my, your email and stuff like that. And I said, these are the 4 things that I have learned in the last 4 years, or these are the first four milestones and all that kind of stuff. And I've received a lot of emails back because they said, I'm so glad I've been in business for 15 years, been in business for 25 years. You made me stop to say, oh, wow, look how far I've come, how many offices I have now, how many employees I have now, the money, the freedom, we get so focused on these goals because we're told to be goal oriented, right?
Yep.
Make the money, have the house, the next project, all the things, post it on social media, all the things. And so it's like, okay, great, reach that goals, but what are all those little things in between that you got to experience, learn from? How many hot stoves did you have to touch to get there? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I love that I have this very vivid experience, because the other thing that I can now ask myself is, did I really think I wouldn't get out?
Oh, yeah. Like, yeah. Did I really not think? Yeah.
Right?
That's a good one.
To justify that mindset of I can't stop until I get out, there has to be an underlying belief that I won't get out if I don't keep going.
Yeah. I won't make it. I won't succeed. I won't reach the goal. I won't, whatever sentence making sense for you. Yes, 100%. That's what, and to your point, we said when we first started the podcast, that's what I'm saying, tell myself. This is stuff I'm telling myself.
Yeah. And so thank you for letting us share these conversations, because you and I aren't the only two that have these experiences, and that's why we're having these conversations. Because what do we do most of the time? I didn't tell this story for 10, 12, 20 years, right? It wasn't relevant. I didn't have a place to tell the story. And yet I think we keep a lot of those stories to ourselves just because we're afraid that, oh, I must be the only one who can screw it up that much.
I think there's 2 pieces. I think we look at ourselves in a negative aspect where I feel dumb, I feel stupid, like who thinks like this, all those things, right? And I think we also downplay the importance of those little moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, if you're listening to this now, I really would just invite you to think about what is a pursuit that maybe you've done in the past, or maybe you're involved in now, where you're telling yourself you can't slow down, you can't stop, you can't take a drink, you can't go to the bathroom, you can't get something to eat, you can't take a nap.
Yeah.
Because if you did those things, then that might mean you never get to the end. And that's just a story we tell ourselves. It's not literally true.
No, at all.
Yeah. So we know that we live by these stories, and we know that these stories then influence the decisions that we make, the conclusions that we come to. When you're working with individuals or teams, where do you start with kind of breaking this down for people?
Oh, I love that. So when I work with a team, I send out a pre-survey because you have the bones of all your workshops, but what does it actually work for them, right? Me going to company A and then coming to D, their issues are gonna be different. They're similar on the bones foundation, but how you communicate and how you actually present is gonna be completely different, right? So I usually send out that survey, and that helps me a lot. That's the storytelling in the sense of like, all right, what's relatable? And maybe I hear more of, the way I talk to myself. Maybe I hear more of what other people are saying to me. Maybe I hear more of, I feel alone. And so really gauging in on what makes the most sense to start with to grasp them. Now I'll break all the things down, but how do I figure out what they actually need in the first place?
Yeah. So what are those bare bones that you're working with?
Yeah, of course. So the main foundation, so I talk about stress management and burnout prevention. So I define what stress is, how you actually react. So that's the first main bone. The other 2 that I focus on are communication. So how do you talk to yourself and how do you talk to others, right? 2 different things.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's my time management. So that's your habits, hobbies, and boundaries.
Okay. So let's just start with, so I love this. It sounds like 3 pillars.
Yes.
And in that stress management, what do you really focus on in that stress management piece?
Your awareness to your stress.
Okay.
It's my job to know when I'm stressed. It's my job to know what's causing me stress, right? Because it's very easy to say, well, my husband does this and my kid does this. Let me tell you about my coworker.
Right.
Awesome. We can do it. But that's not going to get us anywhere. What I need to know is, how I'm physically reacting, because that's our first response, right? Like,
Mhm.
is my eye twitching? Am I breaking out eczema? Like, what is happening to know that I'm feeling stressed? But figure that all out. And then what am I doing? So do I isolate myself? Am I the overeater? Am I a really great Amazon shopper when I'm stressed? Right. So it's really trying to figure out how you're reacting to stress and making that accountability on you.
Yeah, that self-awareness piece. And again, we had a conversation yesterday with Amy Serene, and she was talking a lot about self-awareness. So I'm really glad I love hearing this come up again. And so in self-awareness, what I heard you talk about is not only recognizing that I'm stressed, but what is it that I'm doing kind of as a compensation tool to soothe myself through this experience.
Yes, because I think a lot of times when we think about stress, we have this mindset or the story that we're telling ourselves that when I'm stressed, I must be the one that's like flipping tables and screaming and stomping. And that's when someone's stressed. Not wrong, not wrong. But that's not all what stress is. And that's my job to teach you is there's different signs to when you're stressed. And you talked about the baby steps, right? There's levels of stress too, right? There just might be, oh, I'm running late. That's really annoying.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed a payment. That's really annoying, right? So there's different levels of stress, but also you and I are what I think is a high level of stress and what you do are going to be different.
Well, and I think that makes a really good point of how internal this whole stress experience is. I mean, I think you kind of alluded to it before with, our coworkers and our spouses and kids and everybody else. Like, I think we're so conditioned we feel uncomfortable inside. You can define that in any way you want, right? But when we feel uncomfortable inside, we automatically look outside of ourselves. Where's this discomfort coming from? What is causing this for me? So I can stop that so that I can feel better. Right. And so then we're trying to get our spouses and our kids and pets and everybody to line up with our preferences so that we can feel better inside.
Yeah. And I love your ending sentence, line up with my preferences. This is what I want. And what I want makes the world go round. So, right. And that's not how it works. It's not how it works. But we have told ourselves if my kids follow this rule, if my coworkers follow this way, if my wife does this, everything will be great. Well, let's be real. That's going to go great. Then something else over here is not. And then something's going to be over here. And that's how the world works.
Yeah.
And we have to have that mindset.
Yeah. For me, this whole piece that stress is an internal experience. I think you had mentioned to it earlier. Like, I'm responsible for this. Nobody outside of me is responsible for this at all.
No.
And at first, it sounds like, oh, I have to take all the blame, right? And in that mindset, this isn't about blame. To me, this is about ownership. Because as long as I'm waiting for my spouse or my kids or cats or somebody to do something different, I'm maintaining my stress, right? I'm still in that space. I'm waiting and I'm manipulating, I'm coercing, I'm trying to get that to happen. In the meantime, they're trying to do that to me too. Now I'm super annoyed, super pissed off. Like, how dare they try to do this to me because they're wrong and I'm right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, we're joking about this, but this is the dynamic. This is what creates so much pain for us. And then when I have pain in one area of my life, then we go somewhere else and we think, oh, this is a new context, this is new people, it's not going to matter. But it does. That pain, we're still bringing that. We still experience that. We're still looking for what's wrong in this scenario that I can fix and make right so that I can feel better. We can really just skip the whole external piece and just say, what do I need to feel better right now?
Oh, you answered so many things. So I think there's a couple things that you mentioned too, where it's like, if I take accountability,
Yeah.
I can also realize that I can take, I'm going to use this word lightly, but I have a better control, because you kind of talked about it too. I have better control on changing my mindset, changing my habits, changing my perspective. And that's where I think we get lost. Like, well, that's who I am. And this makes me really mad. It's like, great. That's awesome. Let's start there, because that means, and that means we can start to change some things and grow some different ways and have a different perspective. And that's the coolest part, but we don't see it as the cool part. And so, like you said, and everyone has their own stories. Everyone's
Exactly.
different things. And we forget that everybody else has the same racing thoughts over here. And I'm like, remember all those thoughts that just 1,000 of them just came at you at once? They have the same thing. That's hard. That's hard, you know?
Exactly. It's a wonder that we get along with one another as well as we do.
That self-awareness.
I know.
You know?
Okay, so self-awareness, it's an internal variable that we have choice over. And then your next pillar, I believe, was around communication and both internal and external. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, of course. So first pillar is self-awareness, right? Stress management, because then I can learn my needs and wants. When I learn my needs and wants, I then can communicate them. So for instance, if I realize that Tuesday nights are my most stressful nights, right? We have that one day that just like, oh, I don't want that to happen. It's so hard for me. So I know that because I now have self-awareness because I took a class with Jess. I'm like, oh, for my hard nights, I know this now, you know? And so we do that. And then I now can communicate and say, hey, Mary, I really would love if you had frozen pizza on Tuesday nights for me. It's just a lot for me. Or Tuesday nights are going to be our takeout night.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. It's figuring out what that one thing is that I need. But you also kind of said something in one of our trigger stories. And what it made me think of was being defensive.
Yeah.
How I perceive the situation, how I'm maybe going to try to control the situation. It's that defensiveness. Again, my accountability. So how am I talking to myself and how am I seeing the situation, right? So very clear on what is being heard versus what's being said. They're two different things. What I hear someone saying, I'm worthless, I'm dumb, they don't trust me, they don't like me, da, da, da. What they actually said was, hey, I just want to confirm, did you mean this? Yeah. They're two different stories. Right? So what am I hearing? And that's my job to communicate, like, hey, I heard you say this. Were you trying to say that? Right? We start to have a different conversation with it because of it,
I think it's Brene Brown that I heard this from first, is that she and her husband would start with, well, my story about this is, or something to that effect, right?
Yes. 100%.
I have found that so useful, right? Because in the past, if I would have just declared something, then I'm making the other person wrong. Whereas if I say, well, my story about this is, I heard you say this, it meant this to me, and I'm not sure if that's really what you were trying to say to me. Yeah, right. It gives them an out because maybe they were, but maybe they want to kind of pull back too. Right?
And I think that's true. Like we have all these different thoughts. Yeah. And sometimes we speak without thinking, right? We've done that. And when I go, oh, I heard you say this. Is that what you were trying to say? They're oh, that wasn't what I was trying to say. I could see why you heard me say that, but that what I wanted to say was, right? And I love Brene Brown, like most of us do. Yeah. And yes, 100% says the story that I'm telling myself. That's what she says. The story that I'm telling myself is, right?
Yep.
But it's funny because now they have what happened because she has self-awareness. She started practicing it. Now people in her life are now practicing it. And so funny story is that I do this when I talk to my husband, like, oh, well, I heard you say this. So now he likes to go, did you hear me say this? Or did you hear me say, I'm like, okay, well, I should stop teaching you things.
But isn't that fantastic, right? Because this whole idea about knowing what we want, I've been through some health issues over this course of this year so far. And I've realized that I didn't know what to ask for, right? Because I didn't know what was going on. I was confused. I was frustrated, all of those icky feelings. So I didn't know what to ask of anyone around me. And I felt like that pressure of, oh, I don't know what to ask them. But what I kind of backed off because I didn't have that answer, what I could do is say, I'm really struggling with this and I don't know what to do with it.
And I think kind of what we talked about earlier was we don't have to know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we think we have to know. Like, I have to know the answer. Maybe I'm in my world, I'm an engineer, which I'm not, but obviously, I'm an engineer and I'm like, oh, well, I should know the answer to this problem, or I should, if I'm a tech person, I should know an answer to this tech problem. And it's okay if you don't know. And to your point, whether it's my health, even if I'm in a funk day, say I'm having one of those days, and just if you feel it, it feels drowsy, and I'm like, you don't have to know, but it's my job to communicate. Hey, I'm just in a funky mood. I can't shake it. I do apologize. I'm here. I'm listening. I love you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my job
Yeah.
to communicate with my self-awareness.
Yeah. Because it sure was easier just to blame people for not giving me whatever, helping me feel better.
No, way easier.
But I felt it just, for me, I mean, I guess I just needed to try it over and over and over again. Sometimes I need lots of repetitions, right? But like I wasn't feeling better, and I wasn't feeling better until I finally just said, feeling how I feel is up to me. And so I'm gonna decide how I want to feel. And that means at this point that I accept that sometimes it hurts.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have to resist that anymore. There's no mystery. I don't have to figure it out. I love Matt Kahn's book, Whatever Arises. Love that. And so that's what I do. If when that comes up, I can just love that part of me that's hurting, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical. I'll just love that part of me that's hurting. So it acknowledges it, right? I'm not shoving it off. I'm not denying it, but I also don't have to figure it out. And then it just seems to fade away.
I love the word acknowledge, because a lot of times we go, oh, I just have to accept things the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing I can do about it. But you used acknowledge perfectly, obviously why you used it, because that's what it is. Acceptance means to acknowledge. I acknowledge that I feel weird right now. I acknowledge that this part hurts. I acknowledge that I'm in a mood. I acknowledge that really annoys me.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I'm going to solve world peace right now. I'm not going to fix it. I'm taking acknowledgement to that. I acknowledge that it was a really stressful day. Today was really draining, and I have to do certain things because of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, in even that self-talk, right? Because in my old way of relating to that pain would be, I don't know what it is, and so I have to figure it out, and so it's a mystery, and now it's something I have to struggle against. But taking all of that away frees me up, and it changes how I relate to myself, how that story that I'm telling myself, how I talk to myself, right? Because as much as I don't know what to do with this pain or where it came from or any of that, there's part of me that's judging me for not having figured this out yet.
Yeah. It's judging me for not knowing the body, for me not being a doctor to know what is going on in my body. And you're like, well, yeah, it feels weird. So then you go to the professional and find out. Right? And so we get well, I should know. Well, why?
Yeah.
Who told you should know that answer? And if you feel like maybe there's something you should know because maybe you're trained on it or whatever the case may be, maybe this is, like, again, we talked about it being in your wheelhouse, like, so you feel like you should know it, then you have the skills to figure it out. You might not be able to spit the answer out, but like you can go back to your toolbox and say, okay, well, I can't give her the answer right now, but I know I should know it. So let me go back to my toolbox and figure out the problem.
Yeah.
But we like the blame game, even ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's that external piece again. And when I took responsibility, ownership for that again, then all of a sudden everything shifted. And so I keep bringing this up because I believe that the way that we talk to ourselves is a marker for what our mental health and well-being is, right? And it also, I believe, is how we are willing to talk to others.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I when I first started out in leadership, it was all about what are we doing to, with, and for other people. Right. And what I've really learned is that as a leader themselves, this whole idea around self-leadership, can I change the way that I talk to myself so that I'm more loving, more compassionate, more graceful, which then will allow me to be empathetic without having to do empathy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
practice with yourself so you can understand what it's like.
Yes.
And you can also hear how you're talking to yourself so you know how you're talking to other people. And you're like, oh, wow, I can't say it that way. Right. And you're like, oh, I can see why that sounds offensive. I can see why that might have triggered her. I can see why. You start again. Now you create awareness with yourself.
That's
You
right.
now create awareness with other people. It's crazy. It's cool.
It is, because before I started listening to how I was talking to myself, I had no idea how self-critical I was. I had no idea. Right. And I've heard a lot of people talk about it as being a very abusive relationship, right?
Yes.
With themselves. And so I'm this cannot come up often enough to just tune into how am I talking to myself, and can I bring some grace and compassion to that before I ever worry about what I'm doing with, to, and for others.
Yeah.
Have to love myself first.
It's the old saying, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, but we still just go, ah, I've never heard that before. No.
That's for those other people.
Okay, everybody else. That's not
That's right. That's right. Okay, so we have self-awareness, which then leads to better communication internally and externally. And tell me again what the third pillar was.
time
Time
management.
management.
Yes.
Yeah, what's your approach to time management?
So my approach to time management is the biggest thing is to make time for yourself,
Yeah.
because it's kind of doing that check-in. So I talk to people about the morning routine, and we're talking about that leadership, and a lot of times, it's get up at 5:30 and do the exercise and the meditate and the journal and blah, 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 all the things. Great, cool. If you're at the beginning stage, or if that's not working for you, you can start smaller, right? You can start with what works for you. If 5:30 in the morning is not your jam, that is fine, right? If you're saying, I am so creative at 9 a.m., great. Work your schedule around that. Put those tasks at that point. If you're saying, I love later meetings, great. Do those 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And obviously you have to be flexible, but
Sure.
if you're setting certain things, certain tasks, time blocking, do it to what makes the most sense for you. What works for me, what works for is going to be different. But for me to have that self-awareness, for me to then communicate, I can then start time blocking my day accordingly. This time of the day from 8 to 9, I am really great at admin tasks. For me, I have to get all my check boxes done. I have to create a to-do list for me to do it. Great. Some people like to do it the day before. So before I clock out, I'm now making the list. But I have to have this awareness on what works best for me.
Yeah.
And when I make that time, I always say every morning, drink the coffee while it's hot. It's 1 to 2 minutes. Just sit there. Check in with yourself. How you feeling, Boo? Everything's good? All right. We're doing okay? Right? Have that conversation with yourself. 1 to 2 minutes. We all have that. And ask yourself, like, where you're at.
Yeah.
Am I 60% today? Am I 70% today? I had when I was an undergrad, we were talking about counseling, and my professor said, you're not always going to be 100%, but if you're going to show up 80%, show up your full 80%. But for you to know that, you have to take that time to learn about it, right? You have to take that time to kind of go, oh, I might need 2 cups of coffee today, right? And so it's having that and then blocking your day accordingly.
I think I would say that I've never had issues with time management. Like growing up, going to school, in my first career, and then entrepreneurship. Right now, I'm working for myself, and I still have those habits. Right, but what I found is that I would set timelines, or I set my calendar as if somebody else was doing this. Right, again, one of those external things. I'm doing it because I think other people think that this is when they're supposed to, right? And I'm trying to accommodate everybody. And the biggest kicker for me was scheduling events, right? I was always, it's funny, I think Brene Brown says the same thing. I don't have a good idea about how long it takes from an idea to execution, right? To launch. And so I would be driving my admin crazy with, let's get this done next week kind of thing. And she's like, I don't know. And then it doesn't happen. And then I'm upset with me, and I'm upset with somebody else. And if only everything would happen, then this would happen. And then I realized, Mary, you're the one who set the timeline. What is so important about this particular timeline? Can it be changed?
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, of course I can. But we just block out that possibility. So I love it that you're really teaching us to lead from ourselves. How do we set our day that maximizes our gifts?
Yes. And I think that's the biggest thing. So one, we all worked in someone else's schedule for sure. And we understand like it didn't work for us. We're just we're entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
among a lot of other reasons, right? But I think the other thing is you said we are so good at different things, right? There's that thumbs up thing. I love creating workshops. I love getting the surveys and customizing it. And I just love that. If you want me to do some social media stuff with the marketing and make it pretty, it's not me. That's not my gift. Will I do it because it's one of my hats? For sure. But that's why, oh God, okay, I'll make time for it because I have to get it done part. But I know I love workshops. So even to that point, I have to make sure I set a time because if I could, I'd be here all day.
Long.
Sweatpants on, just writing out workshops.
Right.
That's not how it works either. So
Right.
you have the time block for what you're good at. So you can say, okay, I have to get other things done because you don't want to just focus on the thing that you're good at. But then you also make the time to get the things done that you're not so passionate about, right? That's usually the admin stuff. We're like, oh, this is so tedious, right? It's usually that stuff, but I have to make time for it. And what time? Usually, like that admin stuff, that's when I'm drinking my coffee. Right, my second cup. I'm like, okay, click away. Have a cup of coffee with me, so it's not so miserable. And then you set a timer, right? So it's there's ways to do it, but I think, like you said, maximize your gifts is the biggest thing. And it's okay to have things that you're not good at. Is what I'm trying to say too.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just thinking about this whole entire conversation and the three pillars that we've talked about. And I would say at the core of this, whether it's managing our stress or communicating or managing our time, the difference is an external perspective or an internal perspective.
Yeah. Like, how am I looking at it, or is how I'm perceived? I think people are looking at me. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's for me, the external perspective is what are other people expecting and wanting and needing, and how am I making that happen versus what do I expect and want and need, and how am I going to make that happen? And it doesn't mean that there's, when I describe it that way, it sounds like it's an either or. I think it's an and, right? There's that happy medium in the middle where it's win-win. And I think that's ultimately what we're going for. But for me, the thing I have to remember, and I still have to remind myself, right? I'll catch myself getting annoyed at something somebody said or something my husband has done or whatever. And, and I'll be grumbling about it. And then I'll remember, like, I'm grumbling because it's an internal thing. I've decided that whatever happened isn't acceptable. Right. And so now I'm grumbling about it.
Yeah.
And instead, if it's not acceptable, then I need to communicate it. That's not acceptable, and here's why, and here's what I'd like you to do. Or if I don't know, could we come up with another alternative?
It's that communication. It's that awareness that I want it to be this way. This is how I think we should get it done to make it that way. Or even to us back, hey, I really need you to get this piece done. Oh, not really my strong suit. So give me a little bit of extra time to get that done. I'm going to get it done.
That's right.
It's no problem, but just give me a little extra time because it's not really my strong suit. Yeah. Communication, awareness, understanding. And the thing is, and we talked about this a couple of times, is that when I open that door for other people to say like, hey, I need support. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to come to me and start to say my communication, what they need support on. And now we just have a healthier and stronger relationship.
Right. We're not trying to manipulate or control one another to get what we think we need, which we're not even sure what that is sometimes. Right. Yeah. It's being tuned into ourselves and authentically engaging others. And I think we're supposed to be, right. We're designed to be connected and as human beings. And I think this is the healthiest way that we can connect with one another.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, just communicate.
Thank you for sharing these pillars again. It's such a good reminder for me too. And I love it. It's just three things, right? It's not a lot to focus on. And we can all focus on three things. We're capable.
Yeah, got this.
Yeah. So Jessica, tell us what else. I know you have a fundraiser going on. Tell us a little bit more about what you are doing right now.
Yeah, of course. So right now my project is, so there's 2 events I host every year. One is my thing called Shake Up the Confidence. The one that I'm working on right now is my annual fundraiser. So every year for my business anniversary, I wanted to do something that would involve the community, but also was a celebration. So I host at local breweries a fundraiser for American Suicide Foundation Prevention. I chose that one for a lot of different reasons. One, I think we need to talk more about mental health in general and just make it easy. We talked about hard stories here. We really did. If you think about it, you talked about the loss. We talked about work struggles. We talk, right. Let's talk about them in the sense that they're not so woey, but
Mm.
also it's okay. Today was annoying. Today really was frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And we move on, right? So I want us to have more of those kind of conversations. Um, and I think for kind of really what I learned from my first fundraiser was how many people are really affected by this.
Mm.
It never fails how many times they say, oh, this is what my fundraiser's for. And they always respond with, I know somebody.
Yeah.
It never fails. And so that's my mindset, is that I never would have these conversations if I wasn't doing this fundraiser. So every year, host a fundraiser for suicide prevention awareness. It's really cool. We do it at a local brewery. Lots of raffle baskets, also really fun. Couple sponsors, and then I speak a little bit about my story, and then I have a panelist that makes it super interactive for the audience to get involved. It ends up turning into a big networking group too. So it's just a lot of goods in one thing. So it's always fun.
Oh, that does sound fun. Where are you located?
I'm right outside of Philadelphia, so
Okay, perfect.
yes, yes. But
Perfect.
if you're interested, you obviously can donate on my website as well, journeytoyourself.net. There's a direct donation link.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for being with us today, Jessica.